I stood at the edge of the room, clutching a tray of champagne flutes like I belonged to the staff. It was my cousin's engagement party, or rather, her announcement gala, as Aunt Valerie liked to call it. Everyone was dressed like royalty, glowing under the chandeliers, laughing at jokes they didn't understand just to fit in. I wasn't even invited. My name wasn't on the list. But my mother begged me to help keep the peace, which apparently meant blending into the wallpaper while they toasted to a future built on lies. And I did, until I heard the voice message again, her voice cold, sharp, and unfiltered, echoing in my mind like a cruel lullaby. "You'll keep your mouth shut, or you're out of this family for good." That night, I smiled like nothing was wrong. But inside, I had already decided, if they wanted silence, I'd give them a moment they would never forget. The message had arrived the night I told the truth, or tried to. I had walked into Aunt Valerie's house shaking, still wearing the blouse I wore to the police station. I didn't want drama. I wanted protection. But what I got was a warning. She poured herself a drink, sat across from me like a CEO about to fire an intern, and pressed play on her version of the truth. "You misunderstood. That was just a family matter. You're not going to ruin her engagement over something that didn't even happen." I remember her tapping her long nails on the table, her eyes daring me to speak. "If you say anything, I swear, you're done. You'll lose your inheritance, your name, everything. And no one will believe you anyway." I should have crumbled. But I didn't. I walked out with that voice message saved. Not for revenge, not yet, just ... for proof. Proof that my silence wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. At school, I was invisible. At work, replaceable. And in my own family, a burden. I learned early how to fade into corners, how to listen more than speak, how to smile when the joke was at my expense. They called me sensitive, dramatic, ungrateful. Every label except what I really was, aware. I watched them build reputations like castles, pristine on the outside and rotten underneath. I knew what my cousin had done, what she made him do. And I knew that if I ever opened my mouth, they'd turn on me like wolves, so I stayed quiet until the gala. Until I saw her standing on that stage, pretending to be a princess, making promises she had no right to make. That was the moment I realized no one was going to protect me, not the law, not family, not silence, but maybe truth could. If this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe. It helps more people discover these true stories of silent power. I must have listened to it 100 times. Her voice crisp and confident, like someone who believed they'd never face consequences. Delete this and never mention it again. You think anyone would believe you over her? That line haunted me, not because it hurt, but because it was true. I didn't have money. I didn't have influence. What I had was a phone, a voice recording, and a memory that refused to let it go. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mother, not my friends. I carried that message like a bruise under my skin, invisible but always throbbing. I wasn't waiting for justice. I was waiting for the moment they'd feel what I felt, cornered. And when Aunt Valerie walked past me at the gala, smirked, and whispered, "Good girl," something cracked open in me. That night, I stopped being silent. I started planning. The ballroom was wired for music, speeches, applause. What they didn't know was that it could also play confessions. I had walked in hours before the guests arrived, dressed like one of the caterers. No one looked twice. They never did. I studied the sound system like I was checking glassware, one a cable, one volume knob, one chance. I slipped the voice message onto a discreet USB drive. I didn't plan on making a scene. I planned on making a silence they'd never forget. And just as I finished setting it all up, I looked at the stage and saw the banner, "Together Forever, Carolyn and Mason," her name in gold. His name in shame, and my story trapped between them like a ghost at the party. I walked out before the music started. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The speeches began like any other family celebration, sugary lies, curated smiles, applause on cue. Mason spoke first, voice trembling with forced gratitude, his eyes never quite meeting Carolyn's. Then Aunt Valerie took the mic, calling their union a testament to family values. I almost laughed. Almost. I stood at the back, behind a column, watching her bask in her own performance. Then Carolyn took center stage, radiant in her designer gown, holding up a glass as if she were about to crown herself queen. "To loyalty," she said, locking eyes with me across the room. That's when I knew she remembered the night, the threats, the truth. And maybe, just maybe, she suspected what I was about to do. I didn't blink, I just reached into my pocket and clicked play. The speakers crackled. A few guests glanced around, confused, thinking it was a technical glitch. Then her voice filled the ballroom, sharp, clear, unmistakable. "You'll keep your mouth shut, or you're out of this family for good." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave crashing against porcelain. Glasses paused midair, smiles froze, Aunt Valerie's face drained of color. Mason turned to Carolyn, eyes wide, not with shock, but with recognition. That was the moment everything unraveled. The curated illusion, the photo-perfect lie, the Golden Girl act. The crowd listened in stunned silence as the message played, ending with that final, venomous line, "No one will believe you anyway." And then silence. I didn't move, I didn't cry, I didn't explain. I just stood there, letting the truth echo louder than any scream I could have ever made. The mic was still in Carolyn's hand, but her fingers trembled. Mason stepped back. His expression wasn't confused, it was confirming. He knew, maybe he always knew, someone dropped a glass. The clink shattered the silence, and suddenly the ballroom was a storm of whispers, shifting eyes, and quiet retreats. Aunt Valerie rushed forward, heels clicking like gunshots, demanding the DJ shut it off, but it was too late. The damage was done. I turned toward the exit, not running, not hiding, just unperforming. "Wait," Valerie called out, breathless, furious. But I didn't stop. She had spent years silencing me with guilt, with money, with fear. Now it was her reputation begging for mercy, and I didn't even look back. The next morning, my phone exploded, missed calls, texts, emails. Some begging for explanations, others offering apologies a decade too late. But I didn't respond, not even once. The family group chat was silent for the first time in years. The news had spread faster than champagne at a wedding, the voice message, the betrayal, the unraveling of a golden family image. Mason called me twice. I let it ring. Then I deleted his contact. He knew what happened that night. He knew Carolyn wasn't who she pretended to be. And still, he said nothing. Silence has power. But so does choosing who gets access to your peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be heard. I was just done being erased. A week later, they tried to bring me back in, not with love, but with damage control. Aunt Valerie hosted a private discussion at her house. No cameras, no outsiders, just family. I was greeted like a ghost. Carolyn didn't show. Mason sat in the corner, silent. Valerie smiled that tight, media-trained smile and started with, "We all make mistakes." I let her talk. About image, about misunderstandings, about forgiveness, but never about truth. When she finally paused, waiting for my apology, yes, my apology, I leaned forward, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I'm not here to clean up your mess. I'm here to let it stink." And I stood, no tears, no scenes, just clarity. Because letting go doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes with a quiet exit and a locked door behind you. Within days, Carolyn's engagement was off. Mason disappeared from social media. Aunt Valerie issued a vague statement about privacy and healing, but the damage was already viral. The voice message had found its way online, not through me, but through someone at the gala. I watched from a distance as the empire they built on secrets started to fracture. Brands pulled partnerships, invitations vanished. And all I did was sip my tea in peace. I didn't post, I didn't gloat, I just watched. There's a difference between revenge and revelation. One seeks to hurt, the other to release. And while they scrambled to protect their image, I protected something they never gave me, my dignity. About a month later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note, the kind people only send when they're out of excuses. It was from Carolyn. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know, I remember everything. And I'm sorry, no justification, no spin. Just regret, raw and quiet. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I needed closure, but because I finally realized she wasn't my villain anymore. She was just broken too. The difference was I stopped hiding mine. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and closed it, not as a keepsake. As a reminder, the truth always leaves a mark, but it doesn't have to leave a scar. I started writing again, not about them, not directly. Just pieces of myself I had buried to make others comfortable. The words came slowly at first, but they came. I shared a post about truth, about silence, about what it means to be seen after years of erasure. And to my surprise, messages started pouring in, from strangers, from women, from people who had been silenced in living rooms, in boardrooms, in bedrooms. They didn't know my whole story, but they felt it, that invisible thread of quiet resistance. I didn't want fame. I wanted connection. And in finding my voice, not to scream, but to speak, I found a community that echoed back. We hear you. We've been there. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like finally being believed. I walked past the old house recently. Aunt Valerie's car was gone. The blinds were shut, quiet, empty. Not the kind of silence they once demanded from me, but the kind that follows when the truth finally settles in. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. That place no longer held power over me. For years, I thought survival meant staying small, staying quiet. But now I know survival is speaking, even when your voice shakes. Justice doesn't always slam doors or light fires. Sometimes it whispers. It plays over speakers, and it echoes forever. They told me to stay silent, so I gave them the only thing louder than a scream, their own words, spoken back to them in front of everyone. And I walked away free. Thank you for watching until the end. If you've ever lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the loudest impact is made in silence.